All right, now that we've got our frames together, we just need to pre-process them in Lightroom and then take them into Photoshop and blend them. So let's go ahead and start by selecting all of these. Now, I already selected all these, but if I was to deselect them, and let's select one of them and Command A, that will select all of them in the set. If you have more than just this particular composition, you'll probably select all the images. So to do that, we just need to select one of them, hold down Shift, and select the very last one, and you'll select all of the ones that you'll need for the composite. So let's go ahead and go back to the first one, and we are going to make sure that auto sync is toggled on. And we can just, hit this little toggle, and auto sync will show up. And we're going to go way down here to lens corrections. We're going to remove chromatic aberration and enable profile corrections. This will basically just fix the vignetting and the light drop off of your lens, if there is any. For mine, I typically have a lot of chromatic aberration, so I'm going to go into manual and I'm going to dial in 5 right here. So I think that's going to look pretty good. If I take a look at the edges right here, and yeah, see that right there? Let me zoom in. You can see this like pink fringing right here. If I toggle that back on, it's now gone. Cool. So let's go ahead and switch back to profile. And I'm going to take the sharpening and zero that out. I want to do all my sharpening at the very end. So I think that's looking pretty good. So I'm going to deselect these and go through them one by one and adjust them. So this looks pretty good. Maybe the exposure is a little dark. This looks pretty good. Again, the exposure. That one looks really good. Maybe the shadows are just a little bit too deep. So that one looks too dark. So I'm going to bring up the exposure. This one looks really good. Maybe bring down the exposure just a smidge. That one looks really good, and that one looks really good. Okay, so let's go Command A to select all of these. Whoops. And we are going to right-click, edit in, open as layers in Photoshop. If you're on a laptop that is what do you call it? Two finger tap is what I'm using. I just kind of remember that the mouse clicks. Sometimes I forget that because I don't use a mouse very often. But that's neither here nor there. So let's go ahead and wait for these to show up. And we're going to do all this manually because you really want to learn how to do the manual process first before you go into, the actions and everything like that, because it's a good thing to have in your brain. So let's go ahead and we are going to take these and go to image, arrange, we're going to layer, arrange, reverse, because the way I do this in the process, it benefits from having these layers reversed. So what we started with is now on the bottom instead of the top, and we can go ahead and start with these side-to-side layers. So these are pretty easy to blend. We can just use a brush, or we can use the gradient to kind of like get those looking nice. I'll use the gradient, so I'm going to go ahead and apply a layer mask right down here. And we're going to go G for gradient, and we're going to select from our presets what is this one? Foreground to transparent. That's the one we want, and we're going to go ahead and hit D on the keyboard to reset our swatches, and hit X to switch them to switch it to black. So I'm going to go start from right here, and I'm going to go about right here. If I hold down Shift, it'll allow me to get this in a pretty straight line as opposed to this. So I think that's looking really good. All right, let me take a closer look. Make sure that there's no sign of a tripod. Okay, cool. That's looking really good, but we still have a couple of issues. This is an issue, of course, and this is an issue. So we're gonna go ahead and fix that. And that's actually really simple to do. We just take our base exposure and we switch the blend mode to darken. And you can see it right now. It's just that the effect is like really strong. And we are going to take the brush tool, and I'm holding down Control and Option on a Mac. I don't know what the shortcut is on Windows, so I'm sorry about that. But another way to do it is through your bracket keys. So I typically do this. It's just a lot easier. Plus you get a visualization. So I'm going to do that. And I'm going to change the flow down to, I don't know, 15%. And we're going to go ahead and paint white. So I hit X on the keyboard. That'll swap my swatch back to white. And we're just going to paint till our image looks pretty good. So I think that looks pretty good. I do like a little bit of shine on my cabinets just to get a little bit of detail. This is looking a little bit hot, and then this is obviously too much. It's really good too for getting window reflections, or no, not getting window reflections. It's really easy to resolve such things as window reflections because you can see we have a little bit of a reflection right there. Just blend that in the darken mode, it just fixes it right up. All right, that's looking pretty good. All we need to do now is this frame. This one's easy. Just go into light and blend mode and put a black mask over it. I just hold down Option. There we go. I held down Option and I applied a black layer mask. So pretty cool stuff right there. Go to the brush tool and we're just gonna paint this. I'm gonna make the brush hardness just a little bit more so I can have a little bit more what do you call it? Control. So that looks pretty good. Next, what we want to do is apply our luminosity ambient. So obviously the colors are really out of whack. So let's go ahead and change the blend mode to luminosity. That gets the colors pretty good, but it obviously gets some of them completely wrong. Like this cabinet is not blue right here. And that's mainly because, let me actually go back here. That's because we have a highlight here. If there's a highlight or a really deep shadow, luminosity mode is not going to get the color for it. So we want to have it pretty well exposed, like these walls and the ceiling and everything like that. So let's go ahead and I keep wanting to say Option, add layer mask, and then we're going to paint in the areas that we want. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Command minus. That'll allow me to, Command plus and minus will allow you to scale the images, scale and zoom in the image, just so it's a little bit easier to work with. So I'm going to set my flow down to about 5%, and we're going to paint just like so. Get a nice glow on those lights. Perfect. And I'm not too worried about the windows since we have a window exposure that we can use. That's a little bit too much. I think that's looking pretty good. Maybe a little bit too much shadow right there, so I'm going to show you how to fix that. So I'm going to turn this ambient layer and the lighten layer off, and I'm going to go right back to the darken layer. I'm going to duplicate it by hitting Command J, and I'm going to set the blend mode to lighten. And I'm going to fill this layer with 100% black. So I'm going to change the contents, and I just hit Shift Backspace or Shift Delete, and I'm going to fill the contents with black. So that resets it, and now we can just paint in that area so we get a little bit better color right there. And now we can turn that back on. Yep, that's looking real snazzy. I like it. And now we can just go ahead and fix these windows. I think we applied way too much in this window. So I'm gonna bring that back to a little bit darker tone, and maybe this one as well. We don't want to apply too much ambient because we're gonna cause a little bit of too much of this stuff to come back in that blooming. We don't want that. We want it to be fairly natural. Command 0 to zoom out, or fit to screen, I should say. And we can, I'm gonna do that little lighten mode trick. And we're gonna show you how to do that right now. So I'm gonna take this and hit lighten. And that gets it like perfectly blown out, so the window is the only thing that's going to be blended in. But we have some issues. This is obviously an issue, so we're going to go ahead and put a layer mask on this, just a regular layer mask. Make sure our our, what is this called? Our swatches on black, and we're just gonna paint that out. Just like so. Maybe a little bit higher flow. I'm gonna go back to 15. 15, there we go. That's looking really good. All right, cool. Cool. Now we can just take this, hold down Shift, select the underlying layer, which is your first window pool. Command G for grouping, and set the blend mode from pass through to darken. And obviously it's affecting it way too much, so we need to go ahead and place that in a black mask. And we'll just go ahead and paint with white, I should say. So paint white, and so if you ever mess up your swatches to where you're accidentally like selecting something like let me select this, and let's say we have like the color of the walls, we can just hit D on the keyboard. That's going to reset the swatches. So I'm going to hit X, go back to the layer mask, hit X again because, I'm sorry, hit D again because the swatches are different from layer mask to the actual image. So they're kind of like two separate things. So let's go ahead and just paint this. Gets a little bit more detail. I don't think we need to apply it too much. But I think that's looking really good. It's giving that detail in those highlights back. That's looking really good. Maybe a little bit down here. Ooh, no, that's not gonna look good. Okay, about down here as well. That looks good. That looks good. That looks good. Okay, cool. That looks much better. We get much better color, much better detail. I dig it. So this is kind of what we have so far, but it's a little bit too flat. So we're gonna go ahead and hit Shift, Control Option, or Shift Command. What is this? What is it? It's Shift Option Command E. That's gonna make a merge visible layer. And we are going to set this as a smart object. So sorry about the keyboard shortcut flub. I typically have actions that do all this, so it's kind of hard to remember. So we're gonna go to Filter, Camera Raw Filter, and we are going to add more contrast. So I think that looks pretty good, maybe 5 more. But you see our black point. There's no black point whatsoever. We need to have more contrast. So I think if I go back and forth, that looks pretty good. And I think the colors could use a bit of a boost. So I'm gonna go with like 10 saturation and 10 vibrance. And we're gonna add a little bit, like a small amount of clarity. So we're gonna go with 5 and maybe add a little bit more contrast, just a tiny bit. And I think our highlights are too bright. So I think about right there is looking good. And then we'll need to adjust the white point again to about 10. So that looks pretty good. I dig that. And I'm going to finish this off with some sharpening. I always go with 45 at a 1.5 radius. I don't know why. I feel like that's just a really good combination. And I'm going to go with luminance. I'm going to go with like 30. Yeah, 30 or even better, 45. Okay, that looks really good. Okay, that looks pretty good. Maybe the luminance noise reductions might be a little bit too much for you. So it's really just up to taste, honestly. I like a little bit smoother of an image, so that's where I kind of prefer that higher noise reduction. So let's go ahead and hit OK. And as you can see, just a little bit of a difference in contrast and color. Next, we can go ahead and hit Layer, Flatten Image, or we can go to our layers and just right click and flatten image. So now what we can do is Command S to save it back into Lightroom as a TIFF. And now we have it back here, and we're going to call this 5 stars. And now we can maybe adjust the crop or something like that. Maybe. I usually like to do my transforming separately from Photoshop. I don't know why, but I have no clue, honestly. I can't even explain it. It's just something that I do separate from that camera raw filter. So I think that looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and hit full screen. Yeah, that looks really good, actually. Surprised how well that turned out. Let's go ahead and hit, let's see, F to get out of that. And I think this is ready to go. If I was, if I had a client, crying. Anyway, that is the end of this tutorial. If you have any comments, questions, concerns, advice, leave them in the comment section below, and I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. So anyway, take care, guys.